Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we are going to talk about a brand new manufacturer that's trying to come and squeeze its way into the European market. Now, we've all heard about the danger that Chinese car brands are posing to the European business model and to the European car brands, and so far I didn't really see that many cars on public roads in Europe done by Chinese car brands. And so far, I have to say, I'm not feeling exactly threatened by Chinese brands, because around me, at least, or around here where I live in Europe, I don't see that many of them on public roads. Of course, you have to look at the new car sales in order to get a better picture of how much of a chunk they are eating from this market, because the cars you see on the road today are not necessarily only new cars, so they will start to pop up more and more in the future. The one I'm seeing the most on the public roads today is MG, which is basically a British brand that is now Chinese owned. Yes, I'm starting to see a lot of them on the road today, but as far as pure Chinese brands, well, I don't see that big of a threat yet. However, today we're going to take a look at what is called the Leapmotor C10. This is an electric SUV done by this company called Leapmotor, which is entirely 100% based in China, built in China, developed in China, and so on. So this is basically my first contact with a purely Chinese brand, even though to some extent even that statement could be interpreted as wrong, because a few years back this company entered a merger with Stellantis and is now owned in 51% of its stake is owned by Stellantis. The Stellantis group, as you probably know, owns Fiat, Chrysler, Alfa Romeo, and a lot of other brands, Peugeot, Citroën, and so on. So this is a joint venture, and that helps out Leapmotor in a number of ways, mainly in distributing the cars in certain parts of the world and ensuring they have a service network that can take care of them and their maintenance later down the line. So yeah, you could consider this part of the Stellantis group because it kind of is. But the products themselves are done by Leapmotor in China, and they are brand new on the market because Leapmotor is only 10 years old by now. Almost 10 years old. This is their first more advanced car. I also reviewed the T03, but I didn't film it for this English channel. I filmed it for my Romanian channel, and that was their first car. That's almost 3 years old now, but this is their second attempt, and I have to say it's pretty damn good. Now today I'm going to talk about it, dissect it, and tell you everything you need to know about it. In terms of size, you can already see it next to me. It's a pretty big SUV. It's a D segment car, so think of it of the close in size to the X3, the GLC, right? The cars of this size, the Skoda Kodiaq to some extent, and so on and so forth. So it's almost 4.8 meters long in terms of total length, and the wheelbase is over 2.8 meters. And that's the important part, because at 2 meters 85, this has a very long wheelbase for its overall size. Now, you would compare it on the outside in terms of size with a BMW X3, for example, but once you get inside, you will notice that this car has a lot more room, and I would say it has more room than the BMW X5, which is an E-segment car. So that's the main advantage an electric platform offers you. And this car rides on an electric platform that was developed for this specific purpose. Now, what's interesting is the fact that even though in China this car is available with an 800-volt platform, over here in Europe it is only being brought in 400-volt platform guises. So that's because Leapmotor says that the electric charging platform in Europe is not exactly developed for 800-volt platform cars. I don't agree, but I guess that could be used as an excuse at this moment to push the governing bodies in Europe to install more chargers all around. Design-wise, this isn't exactly a breakthrough in terms of design. Now, you have to be a bit understanding with Leapmotor. This is their first, I'd say, more posh car, so they had to take some cues from a car or the other. The front end does seem to harken back to the Kia Soul, if you will, while the rear end does have some Tonale or MGHS hints here and there, but overall I think it does have its own personality, and I actually like this color. This is a deep green, does remind me of British racing green, and it does look good, and it is included as standard on the palette of colors you can choose from. Now up front you will notice the DRLs, the daytime running lights, LEDs of course, and the headlamps also use LED technology. Now what I did notice is that they are not exactly brilliant. Now they are automatic, and that means they will switch from low beam to high beam automatically, but they do not adapt according to the traffic situation. They don't form that cone of light around the cars in front of you or coming from the other side, and that's, I think, one of the key elements where the Chinese companies are lagging behind their European counterparts in terms of lighting technology. They don't really have so many advanced headlamp designs, but if that is relevant will depend on you and what kind of roads you're driving on and so on. So not a lot of people will be fazed by that. On the side of this car you will notice that it runs on 20-inch wheels, which are part of the design package, which is the one we have installed on this car. But depending on the market you're in, you could also get the style package, which comes with 19-inch wheels. I actually think these look pretty good, done in gunmetal gray, and they don't ruin the ride in this car, and we're going to talk about that when we get to the driving part. I like the flush door handles, even though they are a bit more tedious to use, so you have to do this when you open the car. And you probably noticed that when I opened the door, the car used its turn signal on this side, and that's because this is a safety feature. Whenever you open a car door, the car will signal on the side you're opening the car door, because it wants the people around you in traffic to know that maybe somebody is getting down. So it's a signal for other people to be careful, right? So the rear door, by the way, is pretty huge for a car this size, so it opens pretty wide so you can hop inside. When I showed this car to my friends, actually some of them asked if it comes with 7 seats. It doesn't so far, but maybe it will in the future. Round the back, I actually like the posterior of this car. Now let's hop inside and see what that brings. Let's start the interior review about talking about the trunk. As I said, you have 435 liters of space in here. So I kept a mid-sized trolley in here to give you a better sense of what's going on, how much space you get, because just saying the number doesn't really cut it in my book. And this is a medium-sized rucksack as well. So 435 liters is not a lot, but I think it will be okay for most people. You have hooks on both the left and the right side, and there's some more space under the floor. As I said, if they would have created a frunk, I think that would have been even better. Now let's hop inside, use these levers to get in. This is the build quality section of the video. So I don't know what kind of material this is. Maybe it's some sort of plastic, but it does feel nice to the touch. It's soft, and Leapmotor doesn't make any differences between the front and the rear occupants, and that means you'll have the same build quality up front and in the back. This is wrapped in synthetic leather, and it feels really nice to the touch. There's little to none that I can criticize here. I do like the design of this window switch, but it may be a bit confusing at first because you have to push down to open the window and the way and the other way around. And this is the speaker grill. I think it reminds me of some other car manufacturers speaker grill, but I don't know which one. Maybe you can tell me in the comment section. You have some scratchy plastic at the bottom of the door card, but that's really not a huge issue. And this is the rear bench, and you have so much room. As I already said, just look at this. This is close to 7 Series levels of room, and the driver's seat in front of me has been adjusted in my comfortable driving position. I'm 6 feet tall, 250 pounds, and I have more than enough room in the back here. So I'm guessing 5 adults my size could be carried in this car rather easily. You might have some issues with the shoulder width, but not in terms of leg room or headroom. Let's check the headroom. Here you go. So no issues whatsoever, but as I said, the rear bench can be adjusted a bit higher if you want to sit a bit more upright, but even then I wouldn't have an issue with the headroom anyway. And this is an opening sunroof. I'm going to show you more about it when we get in the front. It's not an opening sunroof, I beg your pardon. It's just that this can be folded back and you can have a transparent roof. So yeah, plenty of room in the back here, no issues whatsoever. And since this car is running on an electric platform, we have a flat floor in the back. So plenty of legroom once again. We do have some USB charging ports, a Type C and a Type A, air vents, and a cup holder over here for the rear passengers because the armrest doesn't have cup holders embedded in it. And that is the front end of the car. Now it does remind me of a different car, but I can't really put my finger on it. Could you please tell me which one, as I'm trying to get in front? The access is really easy, so you won't have any issues getting in or out of the car. Now what I have to point out is that this is where you'll have to touch with a card I'm going to show you. Let me see if I have it on me. No, I don't. It's inside the car. So in order to open or close the car, you will have two options. You can use a smartphone app that's not available everywhere, or you can use a key card that you can just swipe here and the car will open. It's the same system used by Tesla, which had one over here. Now, as I said, the build quality on the front door cards is exactly the same, so everything feels nice to the touch. These are the door regulators and these are the front seats. By the way, the front seats can fold all the way to 180 degrees. You can actually connect them to the rear bench and create like a, I don't know, a seating and sleeping arrangement. This is the key card I was telling you about. You see it has the LP logo on it, and you have to put it over here in order to start the car, right? But once you do that, you can put your phone over here and recharge it, because this is a wireless charger that can be turned on and off using this area over here. We have a cup holder, of course, and some more storage space in here. But this does remind me of a different car. I don't exactly know which one. Let me see if you can tell me. By the way, if you want to adjust the side mirrors, you have to use these buttons on the steering wheel. Now this does remind me of a different car, but I can't really put my finger on it. Could you please tell me which one? Now this could be considered an error in terms of ergonomics, but to be fair, you're only going to do this once or twice and then you're done. So yeah, using this kind of a system could be a bit trickier for some people, but once you've set up your rear view mirrors, you won't have any issues whatsoever. In front of you, behind the steering wheel, you get a 10.25 inch screen that's doubling as an instrument cluster. You can change what's shown on the right side of it, and it's absolutely okay, especially compared to cars like the Tesla Model Y, which don't get a screen over here. Now, this is a 14.5 inch screen for the main infotainment system, which also includes a lot of the functions you want to use on the car, because you have literally no buttons in this car. So I like the fact that you can change your wallpapers, and you have some live one as well, so you can see they have some animations. I love the way this works. It's flawlessly, it works so fast and it's so good, crisp. The graphics are good, so no complaints whatsoever. These are some shortcuts for the most used areas, for example the trip computer, multimedia system, or the navigation system, right? So everything is embedded in here. You have another sub menu for the apps. You have an app store. You can install Spotify or TuneIn Radio or other apps to run natively on this screen, because it has a onboard 4G connectivity SIM card. Now what you need to know is that this doesn't come with Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, so you might have to install some apps to get your life going. But the navigation system is really good, and I've noticed that it can find very interesting destinations you would not expect to find in this car. Now, I don't know what kind of system it uses on the back end, but even the traffic predictions are pretty good. Now, this is the settings menu, and you can adjust a number of things from over here. Everything you can think of. The one you will be most interested in is the ADAS system, where whenever you get inside the car, you will disable this intelligent speed assistance, and you will disable the distraction warning system. That's because we have a camera over here, an infrared camera, that watches your face to make sure you're paying attention to the road. The main issue with this is that it's way too sensitive. And if you wear a hat or a cap like I am right now, it will continue beeping at you because it cannot read your face accurately. And it will even say you're distracted when you're just making sure you can get out of an intersection. So yeah, not exactly great. You will end up disabling it like all the time. So quite nice. I also like the AC control system. It does remind me of a car, but I don't know exactly which. And you can, if you get out of the auto mode, you can actually adjust where the air is going, right? And you can do it like this, right? Quite interesting. Where have I seen that before with a similar animation? Right, so that's it. I also like the 360-degree cameras. They work great and they have a good resolution even at night. You can turn on the heated seats and the ventilated seats using this shortcut over here, and you can actually adjust the position of the seat using this screen. So quite nice, actually, quite nice. I am impressed. But other than that, well, that's about it. Well done, Leapmotor. Let me just turn on the heated steering wheel. Right, and let's set off. So I was saying earlier in this video that this car is available with an 800 volt platform in China, but not in Europe, where it is limited to 400 volts. But there's one more thing that's available in China, and it isn't made available over here in Europe, for now at least. That would be the range extender version, because this car is also available with an internal combustion engine on board that works as a power generator and transforms this car basically into a plug-in hybrid with a huge 70 kilowatt hour battery. And according to the people from Leapmotor, that car should have a range of 950 kilometers, so basically 600 miles. But we're not talking about an electric car, so I don't think there's any relevance to that claim, because it is, at the end of the day, a car that you just fill up at the gas station with emissions and so on. But it seems like just before I started filming this video, Leapmotor announced that they will be launching this range extended version in Europe pretty soon. So the car is actually slated to make its European debut at the Bruxelles Auto Show in January. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in buying this car. For now, you can only buy it in this configuration though. This version we're driving today with a rear-mounted rear-wheel drive setup, an electric motor delivering 218 horsepower and 320 Newton meters of torque, and a battery pack of 69.9 kilowatt hours usable, 74 brute in total. So these are pretty decent specs for 2024, but I guess that will depend on the pricing, and we're going to talk about pricing later on. In terms of tech details, the battery is an LFP unit, so it will support more charging and discharging cycles. It will have a smaller chance of auto-igniting compared to NMC batteries, and it is a bit cheaper. It is cooled, it is water cooled and water heated in case the car needs it, and it's pretty good for a car at this price point. Once again, I'm sorry about this, but we're going to talk about pricing later on. In terms of power delivery, I think the car drives pretty well. It does 100 kilometers an hour from standstill in 7.5 seconds. And what I noticed is the fact that it doesn't really break traction that often. So it does work rather nicely in this setup. I did notice the fact that there is a big plus to this car. And as I mentioned earlier, these seats are incredibly comfortable. Some of the most comfortable seats I've seen on a car launched in the last, I don't know, few years. Couple that with the suspension, which was also set up to be incredibly comfortable. And this car could teach even legacy manufacturers a thing or two about how to make a car more comfortable. So it's incredibly comfortable, and I really appreciate that, because you know what, when I got inside this car and I saw how much it resembles the Tesla Model Y, I got some PTSD. I don't know if you know this, you probably don't because you're not following me for a long enough period of time. I'm not a fan of Tesla models. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, and I'm not a fan of his cars, if we could say that. But I do understand why they are so appealing to a number of people. But my main issue with the Tesla Model Y, every time I tested it, was the suspension setup. It is way too stiff for a car like that. At the end of the day, the Model Y is a family car. All SUVs in this segment are family cars. There's no reason to make that suspension so stiff that it will break your back apart. So yeah, that's my main issue with that car. This one doesn't have that issue. So as I said, when I got inside the car, I had some PTSD and I expected it to be very stiff, but it's not the case. And that's quite amazing, since you don't have, for example, you don't have lumbar adjustment on these seats, and yet they feel perfectly fine on my back. Coupled with the suspension, I could enjoy a long trip in this car without any issues. Now, if you want to drive this car, you should probably know that whenever you're setting off, you're driving in eco mode. So you have eco, comfort, sport, and custom mode as an alternative. So eco mode will basically mean that power is cut off, and you can feel that whenever you're switching between driving modes. So if you're driving in eco mode and you switch to comfort mode, for example, you will instantly notice that the throttle pedal, the acceleration pedal, is a lot more sensitive and the car works differently. In sport mode, the difference between comfort and sport mode is very small, so compared to the difference between eco mode and comfort mode. What you'll also notice is the way the brake works. So in eco mode, the brake pedal has a very natural feel. It's very easy to modulate. In comfort and sport mode, it gets quite different, and I don't really get why. It's way too sensitive. It's way too grabby. The moment you touch it, it starts to brake quite heavily, and I don't really get it. I think it's due to the fact that you have a different regenerative braking mode. So in eco mode, you will have the regenerative braking set to maximum, and basically that means you will be able to come to a complete stop using the regenerative braking alone. In comfort mode, regenerative braking is set to minimum, so that means the car will actually coast whenever it's possible before you actually touch the brakes. So that also means you will have an increased energy consumption, and it also means you have to have a very soft right leg when you press on the brake pedal. So yeah, there are some very interesting differences in this regard, but I do like the way this car drives. I do like the way it comes to a complete stop, very refined, very demure. It does so very smoothly, and there's actually an option for it. If you go into driving, there's an option that says comfortable stop, and the only description we get is to reduce the discomfort caused by braking. But what it does is it changes the way the car brakes, and I think that's a good thing to have in any car, especially if you're gonna drive around town a lot. Now, I'm leaving the driving part aside. I think you will be very interested in getting to know exactly what kind of range I got with this car and what kind of energy consumption they go hand in hand. So I did my usual range test with this car. I have a list of some of the cars I tested electric cars I tested over the years in the description of this video, so you can compare them. Unfortunately, I lost some of them, but the list still contains about 30 or 40 electric cars I tested over the years, so you can compare this car to other models. The WLTP testing cycle says that this car should have an electric range of about 420 kilometers. Well, I was actually quite surprised to see how well this car did. Now, mind you, I tested it in December in one of the busiest cities in Europe and in the world, actually. In the cold, it's pretty cold out, and it has been throughout my entire testing period. And I had an average speed of 12 kilometers an hour. And the average energy consumption was 18 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers covered. That's pretty good. That's pretty damn good. I think in better conditions this car could do about 15 inside the city, which is pretty damn good compared to any electric car on the market. At 18 kilowatt hours you get about close to 400 kilometers of range. Around 370 if my math isn't wrong. So that's pretty good around town. Now, outside the city limits, the average was 16 kilowatts per 100 kilometers covered, but on a series of B-roads, not on the highway. I would have expected it to be a bit more efficient in that regimen, but that's okay as well. It's not that bad. I've seen worse. On the highway, things totally went AWOL. So the average energy consumption at 130 kilometers an hour, because over here that's the speed limit. I know in most Europe you would probably go up to 120. It was 25 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers covered, so around 250 kilometers on the highway. That's decent, but not that great. Not great at all. So overall, around town, I think this car could be a winner. And I don't think it's going to be perfect for high mileage trips, long trips, because of its charging power. But there's something that has to be mentioned in that regard as well. So, what do I mean about when I say that? Well, I'm disappointed in the AC charging power, because if you want to use a Type 2 charger, an AC charger, the maximum charging power you can get is 6.6 kilowatts. Now, I haven't seen a car launched in the last few years with such a low power rating for AC charging. Most cars go up to 11, and a lot of them have the optional feature that you can buy to charge them at 22. But this one only stops at 6.6, which is pretty weird and disappointing at the same time. On a DC charger though, the power, according to Leapmotor, can go up to 84 kilowatts. Now, what I did find out is the fact that not only is that power level maintained throughout the charging cycle, which is pretty amazing, but I actually saw a power reading on the charger I used to recharge this car that was even higher. So when I connected the car during my one charging session with it, when I connected it to the charging station, even though the car was down to about 13% state of charge, and even though it was really cold out, it started charging at 86 kilowatts from the get-go, right? So that was weird, because not only was it more than what the official specs claim, but if you've driven an electric car, if you had an electric car, you probably know that during colder days, when the battery is cold, the charging power is most of the time limited. So let's say you have a charging power of a maximum of 150 kilowatts. If the battery is cold and if you're under 20%, most of the time, whenever you connect it to the charging station, you won't see more than half of the maximum charging power shown on the display of the charger, right? So you will probably be connecting and using 75 kilowatts of power. This one went all out from the get-go. And what was even more interesting was the fact that, according to Leapmotor, charging this car from 30% to 80% using a fast charging DC charger should take 36 minutes. Now, I had 14% when I connected to the charger, and the car went up to 80% in 33 minutes. So faster than the claims made by Leapmotor themselves, which was pretty impressive. That doesn't really happen in real life when I'm testing electric cars. Most of the time when I'm testing electric cars, they don't really rise up to the expectations, especially if we're talking about cold weather. So I plugged in the car. The app said that I should be done in about 45 minutes, and I left. I was at a shopping mall. And I got a notification 33 minutes later that the charging process was done. And I can wholeheartedly say that I was impressed by that performance. So yeah, it doesn't really, if you look at the specs on paper, you might be disappointed at first, but let me tell you that that's not the whole story. As I mentioned in a number of my reviews, the charging curve is the one that's essential. And according to my app, this car had an average charging power throughout the entire charging cycle of 85 kilowatts. And that is pretty good, and I think that's in line with a lot of its rivals over here in Europe. So that is one of the good things about this car, despite what it may say on paper. It also has vehicle to load on board, and it comes as standard. The heat pump comes as standard, so there's plenty of kit. And according to my trip computer, since I charged the car yesterday, I now have an average energy consumption of 16 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers covered. So it dropped compared to the previous testing cycle, but I did cover 30 kilometers in an hour and a half. So that would mean an average speed of about 20 kilometers an hour. For this trip today, I already covered 9.4 kilometers in 32 minutes, and the average energy consumption is 13.8 kilowatt hours. That is amazing considering the weather and considering the average speed of the car. As I said, if I didn't have that 12 kilometer an hour average speed when I did my initial run with this car, I think I would have been closer to 14, 15 kilowatt hours. And I think this proves that I might be on to something. So I would like to test this car in different weather and different traffic, because I think I might get better results. So that said, this is an impressive car overall, but it will only be impressive as long as the pricing is kept very well in check. Because the thing is, as good as this car might be, it still comes from a basically unknown car manufacturer from China, and people will normally be reluctant to buy one. I don't see nothing wrong with that. That's the natural reaction anyone should have to a brand new brand. They haven't proven themselves yet. So they can change the perception of some people by adapting their pricing to their purpose, with their purpose being to get to be known at first and then to gain some market share. So pricing will depend on the market you're in. Over here in Romania, this car costs 44,000 euros, 43,900. That's the list price. That's 400 euros or 500 euros less than a Tesla Model Y. And that's not enough of a difference, because people already know about Tesla. The Model Y was the best-selling model worldwide in 2023. So you can't really beat Tesla with a 500 euro difference, considering that you're a brand new manufacturer on the market, and people will of course be reluctant to buy your products. At the moment, there's a promotion going on. There's a sale going on. If you want to buy one, you get a 3,000 euro discount, so you get down to 41,000 euros, and then the government rebate over here is another 5,000 euros, so you can drop down to 36,000 euros. But then again, the Tesla can get that government grant as well, so the price difference between them with this sale will be 3,000 euros. That's still not enough. But if this car was 35,000 euros, all in list price, I think a lot of car manufacturers would have a very big issue trying to compete with it. And I'm talking about ICE versions, hybrid versions as well, not just electric cars. Because if we leave the Model Y aside, The remaining rivals this car has are cars like the Volkswagen ID4, cars like the Ford Explorer, cars like the Renault Scenic, and Nissan Ariya, and so on. So plenty of cars this car can rival with, and I can tell you that it's close. It's really close. It's closer than you might want to admit if you're a fan of legacy manufacturers, if you will. But I am very curious to learn about what price this car has in your country, and if you would take it into consideration if you want to buy yourself a new SUV this year or maybe next year. Let me know in the comment section below. And until next time, don't forget to like, share, and of course, subscribe. Ciao.